Hi, Sean.
Trevor Smullen, you're very welcome. How are you getting on?
I'm getting on well, Sean. Thanks very much for asking me on here as well. I've been listening into your podcasts and find them very enjoyable.
Great to hear, Trevor. I always appreciate the
yeah,
feedback now.
yeah. I loved, going to sleep at night. I was just mentioning this to you, and I'd put on one of your podcasts and just kind of tune in. And the last one was with Big Nyler, and it was thoroughly enjoyable, really.
Yeah, and look, you would have spent a lot of time in the dressing room with Nyler as well, and playing against him, of course. So I'm sure it brings back lots of memories for you as well.
I loved Nyler. We were on under 16 and minor teams together, and if there was anything going on, I would travel with Nyler to games and to physios and you name it. We traveled half the length and breadth of the country together. And back in the day, I can remember his dad going to games as well and hanging out with my dad in hotels the night before if we were down maybe in Waterford or some counties that we mightn't have been playing in the last few years, because we're further up the divisions. But look, it was great times,
Yeah, great whole unity as well, and to think you keep it going and then play at senior level together.
Yeah, absolutely. And, no better man to play along beside either,
Oh, of course. I can only imagine. How are you keeping these days and these times? I presume, you always struck me as a man that would keep fit anyway.
Yeah, keeping fit and getting out a bit more time in the day now. I would have wrapped up my own work last Friday week, and it was on reduced hours anyway, Sean,
Okay.
Since March, but it was fine. And in a lot of ways, I've been enjoying the bit of downtime, and I've been using it as an excuse to kind of keep fit and get a bit of running in. And I've hooked up with Ballymahon again this year, maybe just to see how I get on. So
yeah, where did the hunger come from that again, or was there someone chasing you?
No, there was no one chasing me or anything like that. Obviously, when I got back to Ballymahon first, I popped up to a few gym sessions just to keep fit and that sort of thing. And next one, I just started considering, maybe I'll play a bit or maybe not. And, I still don't know how it's going to work out, Sean, because you have to get into games and see how the body's holding up. But in fairness, so far, so good. And I was just thinking, when we're in intermediate championship this year. And the first championship at kind of senior level I ever won was an intermediate at a very early stage. So if this was going to be my last year, I'd love to win it again this year. So I suppose if there is a motivation factor, it would be that kind of to sign off on the way you kind of signed into it as well. So that would be nice. But obviously that's a pipe dream, and things have to go very, very well for you, and everything has to kind of fall into place. But it's nice to have that there as a motivation,
True, yeah, and look, it's been a very disruptive year so far, so it's going to be difficult to get that match practice in. But look, games are going to come thick and fast.
It's going to come hard and fast, and anything could happen, Sean. It could last 5 minutes, or it could last a year.
Exactly, yeah. Well, you've a good bunch now. You've a good bunch, and you can build on last year as well.
They got to the final last year, and they did very well, and they're a great bunch of lads, and they've all been keeping fit and training, and like every other team,
Yeah.
So we'll just see when games come along how things pan out as well.
I'm sure they'll be delighted to have you back now, Trev, especially the young lads. Like, it'd be great to see someone like yourself coming back in and just been in the presence, and you'll have an awful lot to bring as well, and through your own experience.
Yeah, I've even been enjoying doing a little bit of training with the lads. There's both young and old. Two guys that regularly run with here would be Ken Lovell, who's actually older than me and still playing, and we'll say Kyle Fitzmaurice, who was younger than me. But when we started back, like, even to see the likes of young Kyle, he had maybe 10 kilograms, 12 kilograms to lose in body weight, and he's lost it already just getting out during this period and doing a bit of work together. And I've even enjoyed seeing that happen,
Yeah. Oh, he was flying last year.
Was he?
I'm hoping he'll finally kick some serious scores in that final, yeah.
I'm hoping he'll be every bit as good, if not better, this year.
Yeah, well, he's in good company, and I suppose Ken was always an athlete, wasn't he?
Yeah, sure. He can still move,
Yeah.
Ken in fairness to Ken, now he'd be getting out twice a day. He'd a little bit of a run, maybe early in the morning, and he'd be on the bike in the evenings, then maybe 40 or 50 kilometers. and he likes doing it.
Fair play to him, because it's very important to have lads in that bracket showing that sort of leadership as well.
Absolutely. And at a very early stage, then when I went looking for football boots, I didn't have a pair, and he let me his. So I still have them.
Not so bad. He's not looking for them back, anyway.
No, not yet.
Great stuff, Trevor. Okay, so I'm just going to go into your accolades, and we'll get cracking then. So you schoolboy championship, one under 14 All Ireland Féile winner, very hard medal to get. Fair play. Under 14 All Ireland Féile runners up in the hurling. Am I right in saying here you have an under 16 championship in football and hurling?
That's correct, Sean.
One minor championship, the intermediate championship, which you just alluded to. Your senior championship.
That's right.
2002, Trevor, wasn't
it? 2002.
Division 1 league titles, the famous Burn Cup, Leinster provincial representations, and you were captain of Longford in 2003.
Yeah, that's just about it, really, Sean. I like to put in all the underage thing, because I really feel that that's where it begins,
Absolutely.
Sometimes when we win maybe a senior championship, maybe the people that are around that year and the manager who happens to be in place at that specific point in time gets a lot of the credit. But to win a senior championship with any club, it starts at an underage setup, and I think you have to experience things along the way through winning and everything else at that age for it to manifest itself into a senior championship. And there certainly was a lot of great people around us in Ballymahon and in the club that, when the senior title came around in 2002, there was a great foundation there from years earlier, going back to schoolboys,
Yeah. And as you said there, just because they may not be present on the day of any particular success, their contribution can't be underestimated at all.
No, they can't. Like it was a time, Sean, of kind of really true volunteerism, at that for underage back in the early 90s, where, people weren't as consumed with other stuff that was going on in the world, and part and parcel of that was given a lot of time to the young people around the area. And the names of the people who worked with me at that age, anytime I did get success, be it hurling, football, basketball, or any sport, in later years, I always thought of those people. They resonated more than anybody else with me, really.
Yeah. It's very important. Look, sure, our whole development, and the people we come up under, sure, they're the reason we go so far. And another thing, when you mentioned about underage success, for a lot of lads, sometimes underage is where it ends. And that's the bit of success they experience in that field of sport. Some of us are fortunate enough that we can progress on to senior level, and you can get engrossed in that aspect of it. But
Absolutely.
For a lot of lads, the underage medal is very important.
Yeah, and they remember those medals every bit as well as we might remember a senior title or something like that. And, it's only when you meet people that you played at underage level, and then, you go your separate ways and the world takes you different directions.
Yeah.
And then you meet them in a pub one night, and they're the times they have happy memory of, just like yourself. And, you're able to create a bond straight away with them because of what you did at maybe schoolboys or underage. And there's always a starting point for a good conversation, Sean.
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree, Trevor. Totally agree. And then just moving on to your basketball, which is another massive part of your life. It's actually a sport I've become very fascinated with in recent years. I don't know what I've been doing all my life that I haven't been paying attention to it, but I'll just go through your accolades in relation to basketball. Trevor represented Ireland at basketball from under 15 to senior men's, won All-Ireland School Championship, 3-time Irish Basketball Player of the Year award, 1 Super League Player of the Year award, 1 Super League top scoring Irish player. FIBA, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, that's FIBA.
FIBA Junior Men's Europe Highest Score Award, FIBA Men's top scoring percentage in Europe. When I seen that award there, that's something I meant to ask you. Top scoring percentage in Europe, would that be, say,
that would
shots taken, shots converted sort of percentage?
Shots taken, shots converted. Yeah. It did call it. I suppose to use the NBA term, it would be your field goal percentage is what they would call it, Sean.
It's a lovely award to have. So, full credit to you.
Yeah, that was to just explain how that would have been at a European qualifying championships. So you might have played against 6 other teams from Europe, and there would be 4 divisions happening at various different times. So everybody's percentages will be put into kind of the mix, and
Wow.
I happened to come out on top on that particular one.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, good times.
Two Four Nations Championship under 16 juniors men.
Yeah.
World Student Games representation, and
Yeah.
representing Northern Ireland in Tour of New England in basketball.
Yeah.
It was, when you sent this on to me, Trevor, that was unbelievable, because I personally wouldn't have been aware. Obviously, I was aware of your, of how involved you are in basketball, but I suppose I never would have heard of your achievements, or I wouldn't have, we never would have engaged in conversation about it as such, because we're so, especially around here, we're so football dominated, that it wouldn't, there's very few, and you fall into that bracket, who have branched off and been so successful in another code.
Yeah, that's true as well. And my basketball career, Sean, was very, very enjoyable, but it kind of happened very quickly as well, where a lot of the good things happened before I was 25 years of age, So the things that happen, we'll say 20 years plus, they fall away from a lot of people's memories, and they kind of get forgotten about a little bit. So when you asked me to send on a few things, I was even looking at it going, God, I can barely remember it. Now, some of the most amazing things I did remember, but and it was enjoyable actually, just writing this stuff out at an older age and just thinking, oh, that was nice, and even to start with that brought back great memories.
Yeah, a lot of people say that to me when I ask them to get their accolades together. They never take that time just to reflect, and I'm sure the memories come flooding back, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you move on very quickly as well in life, and things change,
Yeah, you feel very fortunate to look back on so much as well.
I do, yeah. God, I have one in there, and it was the World Student Games Championship, Sean. And of all my sporting experiences, and nothing compared to that particular tournament in my whole life. It was just a really, really memorable part of my basketball career and my Gaelic football career, because they were very intertwined. But that was certainly one that I remembered better than anything else, And
what stood out for you?
Yeah, what stood out was, well, if you take the World Student Games, right, we were positioned in Mallorca, in Palma, and they have an opening ceremony, Sean, and you're locked into Real Mallorca Stadium, under the stadium, with maybe 6,000 other athletes.
Wow.
And to give you an idea of the type of caliber of athlete that's at that, like Ben Johnson would have competed in the World Student Games, Michael Phelps, Jessica Ennis, and these people at that level, Jessica Ennis would have only got a bronze medal at the World Student Games, and then went on to win Olympic gold. And you're sitting in like a party atmosphere, but under a stadium, not knowing what's going on outside,
Incredible.
And I remember walking out that day into Real Mallorca Stadium, and it was just full. It was full, packed to the rafters, and it was like an Olympic opening ceremony. When Samaranch did the talk, who was the president of the Olympic Council at that time, and then it was Nadal, the Barcelona centre back.
Oh yeah,
I think he's an uncle. He lit the Olympic flame, and they had these archery guys that would shoot the flame over the flame, and it just became one big sporting party. And I remember the hairs just standing on the back of my neck as you paraded around the athletics track on that, and a few weeks later there'd be guys running on that track that had Olympic gold medals, and the American basketball team that competed in that competition, and they were all household NBA names by the time the following year had come along.
That's phenomenal.
And just to be part of that, Sean. But I remember going back then and thinking, on that day when I walked out into the stadium, all the people that kind of helped you out in your Gaelic football growing up. I remember just being thankful to them. Standing in the stadium, I had a camera in my pocket and never took any photographs. I just stood and I just went.
Took it in.
Just thanked everybody in my own mind that had helped me out growing up, at under 14, playing football in Ballymahon, all of this sort of stuff. And my thoughts were with them as I was looking at all this happening. And I remember being thankful to all of them for giving me that chance to experience that, And I never took any photographs. And just recently, somebody posted up onto YouTube that opening ceremony. Cool. So if you wanted to take a look at it afterwards,
absolutely will, yeah.
It's in Japanese. It's on a Japanese news station, and you'd have to look it up. Universidad Palma de Mallorca inauguration 1999, and you'll get an idea of what it might have felt like for me. But I remember there was a tear in my eye, Sean, just being there and experiencing that. And there was no alcohol at it, but it felt like the greatest party and the greatest sporting party I was ever at.
I'm not surprised. It sounds incredible, Trevor. Just the one thing I'm I suppose fascinated about is getting to that point, the journey to that point. Where does it all begin for you?
It all began really in Ballymahon with my own good friends, Sean. Basketball had been a big pastime for some of the guys that were slightly older than me in the local community, They would go into Longford, and a guy called Mick Murphy, who you might have come across, Mick Murphy Senior, was a big part of getting me playing basketball. And there was two good friends of mine in Ballymahon, Darren McGillery and Ken Cooney, who were playing in there already. Okay. And then some of the young lads around my own age as well. And I just went in one day in a car and really fell in love with the game, Sean, to be perfectly honest. And for about the next 10 years, basketball was in my hand for 2 or 3 hours a day, every day of the week.
Did you follow the NBA back then as a young lad?
I did. And it wasn't that easy to follow, Sean. Coverage back then, it was getting videotapes. You would travel to Dublin specifically to buy a videotape of Michael Jordan or Larry Bird and bring it home and stick it into the cassette recorder to play it. Because you didn't have the selection of channels, you were stuck with your BBCs and RTEs.
Was Channel 4, I don't know why Channel 4 is in my head. I remember it used to be highlights at the weekend.
You were correct, Sean. Yeah, Channel 4 used to show highlights, but even back then, I remember getting Channel 4 on your television and getting it crystal clear wasn't the easiest.
No, it wasn't. No, because I actually remember watching it as a young lad myself. I don't know why that sticks in my memory, but I loved that era now, I have to say. But and I suppose it's just it's amazing to hear the interest in basketball, and for some people to just be oblivious to this. This was like
perhaps
on. And do you think it was the town, the fact there was a town area, that's why the interest was there? Because a lot of the rural clubs basketball wouldn't have been under forte at all.
Yeah, possibly a town area. I'd love to delve into that a bit further myself. I'd love to. And now Darryl was down last night with Ken, and I'd love to ask him how he started playing basketball, because his family would have lived across the road from mine when I was young, and it was really him and the rest of the lads there that originally got me involved in basketball. And there was a great woman in Ballymahon who needs a mention, and that's a woman called Maureen Kern. And her son Paul used to play a lot of basketball, and she would literally offer up her front garden for me to go down and play every day of the week with Paul. And we'd be still playing at 2 o'clock in the morning, Sean. We'd put lights on at the house and just play until basically we couldn't play anymore, And it was back in a time where your parents were happy to leave you out all night,
different time.
They knew you were doing kind of no harm and kind of enjoying yourself.
Yeah, because like when you're playing Gaelic at that age, you come away from training, you sit down at the weekends, there's a big game on the telly, that stimulates your interest. You're looking forward to getting back out training next week after watching some of your heroes on the telly. But with basketball, I'd imagine at that time it was just basically you trained with your group of friends, but as you said, it wasn't accessible to get watching on the NBA. There was no real coverage, so it'd be easier to fall away from the sport.
Yeah, it would be easy to fall away from it, but basketball has had one big beauty maybe that Gaelic football didn't have, in that you could play games like a 1v1 or a 2v2, so you didn't need a group to really practice the game. And you could get as much quality practice in on your own with a football. I'm talking about the skills of the game, then, which might take 6 or 7 Gaelic football players to get the same kind of quality and enjoyment out of, But you can have these small scale competitions that you don't need a full unit to implement and to kind of get playing,
Yeah, very true. And then when you break it down to a small level, you have the backboard as well, so you're not chasing the ball as much either as you would be.
Absolutely, and there's little gimmicks. Mark Connor called me the other day. He had a nephew that's playing a bit of basketball, and he said, "Will you come out to the house to play a bit with him?" And he had a great setup out there. He had his basketball, he had his court, but underneath it, he had a little kind of net that would return the ball to you as well.
Yes, so I actually saw it on the Last Dance documentary, which fascinated me even at that time. Steve Kerr was practicing his shooting.
That's right.
Yeah, he had
amazing shooter Steve Kerr was as well.
And just to see the resources they had back then, it just really interested me. That.
Yeah.
We're only seeing some of this stuff now in Ireland.
Yeah, that would have been a pipe dream for me back when I was young, to have something that there was the odd time now I'd have to go rooting the basketball out of maybe the neighbour's garden or something like that,
Yeah.
I actually love that photograph, Sean, you have of, that's a Delta Notre Dame team that we won an under-19 National Cup with in basketball, and there's some great lads there on that team that had great basketball players as well. So it's a nice photograph. It's one I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, you weren't too hard to pick out now.
No, I probably haven't changed a lot either. But
just the hair, maybe.
It's long now, Sean. It's long since
we haven't access to barbers. We're all in the same boat.
I found a little girl that would give me a short back and sides, but I wouldn't let her near the top of it. So I have a big mop on top. I've got it relatively tidy around the sides,
That's what you're rocking. So, Trevor, obviously, you were heavily involved in the basketball and, of course, the football at the same time.
Yes.
How long do you think you were able to manage the two?
I managed it right the way up until college ended and when I had to start working, Sean. But it did get more difficult as I went to university, because we've been pulled by two groups. Like, there was days where I might play a National League game on a Saturday, when there was games on a Saturday, or on a Sunday at 2:00 you might play a game, and then maybe Sunday evening you could have a National League basketball match as well. So you're talking 2 games in one day. Now, Sean, in this day and age, that the sports scientists would say that would fly in the face of smart behavior, but that's what I did, and I'm not sorry I did it. But I suppose it did get to the stage where I picked one over the other as I got older, and particularly started into working life.
What were your basketball coaches like at that time? Were they sort of modern thinkers in the sense that they were aware of the other coach you were playing and they looked after you to an extent, or would you have been required to train at a high level as well as play at a high level?
Yeah, well, there was never a compromise, Sean, with training, and looking back, it may not have been the smartest, but I did try to do it all.
Yeah, I'm sure you're young, of course.
Back then, the science wasn't there, Sean. Like, I studied a sports science course when I originally went to university, and it wasn't even called a sports science course, and it fitted into the arts faculty in the college, because sports science was only coming on board at that particular point in time.
Wow.
And to a certain extent, I'm not saying it served me wrong, but the harder you trained, the better you got, was the mantra.
Yeah.
And it certainly got me so far, but I'd love to go back and try it the other way and just compare the two and come to a definitive conclusion over which suited best.
Of course. And were you fortunate in the sense that you didn't experience too many injuries?
I was, yeah. It's funny, my life could have changed, Sean, as well, when you talk about injury, because when it came to going to university, I was sitting on the fence. I was wondering, will I go to the United States and take up a 4-year scholarship or stay in Ireland, you know.
Yeah, I was curious about that. That offer obviously came along.
Oh yeah, like when I
And
was
what happened
going
there?
to college, I was playing a school's football match in Ballymahon, and the snow was down. And a school's football match, you might leave at lunchtime, go straight to the football pitch, you know,
Yeah.
and you'd be trying to fit it in between classes that you might have to get back. Now, only thinking about it then, and I remember having a little niggle with my hamstring, and I remember asking the physio off the time to if there's anything you have. So he gave me Difine, but it was a thing back then. It used to be called Brufine. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I've heard
Or
of it.
Brufen or something like that.
Yeah, ibuprofen.
So I took 2 of these pink tablets at the time, and they probably masked the pain at painkillers. So I was kind of half hobbling and getting on with the game. Doing next minute I could hear a rip, and I fell to the ground. And it was like leather ripping, Sean. I never had a sensation like it. And that particular year in my final leaving cert year, I ripped my hamstring off the bone.
Oh God.
And yeah, it slowed me down completely. So the idea was to
is this your right leg, Trevor? Sorry.
It was right, or Sean, do you know, I can't even remember because it happened sprinting. It didn't happen from a kicking motion.
I'll tell you why, because there's a question down the line. It's just when you're talking about it now. But sorry, continue.
Yeah. I can't rightly remember at this stage. It was probably my left leg. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I remember months down the line when I was trying to make a comeback, it always caused me a problem jumping. And I used to always leave off my left leg. So that's why I'm thinking it was my left leg.
Okay.
But anyway, it shut me down for about 6 months. And it put the American college idea on the back burner till the following year, you know. And at that stage I had settled into the University of Ulster in Jordanstown in Belfast there, and I had hooked into a basketball team up there as well, originally Star to Sea, and was enjoying life up there as well. And it just never came back around to me then, you know.
Yeah, it's a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, once in a lifetime thing. Well, I could have gone the following year. I think I had a lot of options, but I had become settled, you know. I was happy. I was pulling a little wage from the basketball. I was a student that wasn't doing too bad for himself, and was more than happy enough to stay at that time and stay in Ireland. And I had also had a huge grow for Longford football then, where I'd been selected onto the senior team, and I was really enjoying it, you know.
So what age were you when you went to Jordanstown? You were part of that setup?
I would have been 18.
You're 18, and you made your county debut at 17. Am I right in saying that?
I think I could have been 17 or possibly 16 the way the National Leagues went, Sean.
Okay.
I was in 5th class, and back then there was no National League starting in January. It used to start in October. So my birthday would have came around on January 29th. So it was the following year.
Wow.
But I may have played just those little few months
at 16
as a 16-year-old. I came on for Desi Barry, and you know, it's one of those moments that it was really surreal. You know, this is a hero of mine.
Yeah.
And I just love this. I remember where I was. I remember going onto the pitch. I remember handing the referee the little slip, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a moment I'll never forget.
Unbelievable, yeah. I had Desi on actually the other day. A great chat with him.
What a great person, really, you know. And a mentor, really, you know.
Yeah, phenomenal. And you're exposed to that from such a young age, Trevor. I suppose can you give me some sort of an outline of your week, like a peak week with Longford football and your UUJ basketball, like the training schedule? Like, how did you operate from Monday to Sunday? What was the routine?
Yeah, I suppose I'll take it back to before that, Sean, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Even though when I was at school, so the situation was very simple. I would train with Longford maybe on a Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. That would be your routine, something similar to what it is now. Maybe there's an extra session or two these days. And then on the off days, I would go up on an off day during the week, I would get a bus to Dublin to train with Delta Notre Dame, get a bus out to the National Basketball Arena, train with them, stay overnight in one of the lads' houses, be dropped into Dublin train station the next morning, get a train back down. My dad would pick me up and I'd be back in school by 9 o'clock. Jeez. And that was happening twice a week as well, which was crazy when I think about it. But do you know what? Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I wouldn't change any of that for the world. Even the friends I made from it, Sean, you wouldn't believe it. And they're the guys, COVID-19, and the guys you're sitting down, they're the guys that you're still talking to today. And you're living great memories which you'll meet for a pint. And I don't regret a single bit of it, really.
Isn't that what it's all about? Like, and especially at the end of it all, that you can say that.
Yeah, it means so much. It really does. And everybody goes their different ways,
Yeah.
And there's guys in America and guys out, but now there's a Masters basketball tournament, and these guys will come back and they'll play once a year, and you still get to meet up. And the Longford footballers, they're friends for life, Sean. Absolutely friends for life. Like from Pádraig, that's managing the Longford football team at the moment. I was his best man at his wedding. He's a guy that you can rely upon to have a chat with, to talk about anything. Niler, every time you meet him, he just makes your day a bit better. He's always smiling. He's always got a good word for everybody. It's like you couldn't swap that for the world, Sean.
No, absolutely, completely agree. Yeah, and you're obviously super fit, Trevor. You're always known for your fitness anyway, but at that time you had to be because it was just a grueling schedule now. I know you were enjoying it and all, but from a physical standpoint.
There's no doubt about that, Sean. That fitness is consistency over time, really,
Yeah.
It's volume of work over a period of time. You can't just show up one week. Myself and a friend of mine have a little joke with Mark Connor. Mark mightn't lift weights all year, and then he lift weights the night before to get strong for a game the following day.
That's the way he operates.
Well, he's quite a good guy, and he's very fit in that. But we do joke about it, But when you're doing that volume, it's consistency over time, and if you're moving that often, you can't be nothing but fit, Sean.
Yeah, of course. I'm just wondering though, the game of basketball, while there is, there's lots of crossovers. Like you train, you might have your in-house games, or what's the term actually used? Your scrimmage. Your scrimmages, and then you're coming down the following night and you're facing into an Eamon Coleman training session, which you're being ran like a dog, say at the time, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was your mentality just right? Let's just get this done. I'm well able to do this, or was that side of it difficult because you could have had an important scrimmage the next day?
Okay, Sean, we're talking about a time where, and I'm not saying either is right or wrong, but we're talking about a time where athlete recovery methods, there was no such thing.
No such thing, yeah.
So I was oblivious to all of this, right?
Okay.
And I prided myself on, if it came to a fitness test, I wanted to be in front. It was a strange sort of mentality, but I didn't want to be second or third. I wanted to try and win the bleeding thing,
Yeah.
And there'd be some nights I couldn't do it, and I'd go home, and no more so than yourself when you were having your chat, you'd be kind of reflecting on it and going, well, why didn't it happen? Yeah. And retrospectively looking back, it didn't happen because, I was bollocks excuse my language, from the night before,
Yeah.
But
it's just the time,
you wouldn't have been able to pin those two factors together, because back then, and you even look at Kobe Bryant, who turned around and he goes, well, I don't believe in kind of the periodization of players playing, if you're available, you play. As Michael Jordan said in his documentary, he felt he had a duty to the crowd to play every game.
Yeah.
But now you have all these monitoring systems, which are great, and let's be honest about it, they are producing better athletes. But back then, there was just no such thing.
Yeah.
And when you're oblivious to it, you don't know.
Yeah, it's true. And sorry now to just interrupt ish. Like when you talk about, yeah, I totally agree from an athlete's perspective. If you're available to play, you should play. Like
Yes.
I for one would never be one to say, I think I could never sit out anything because I'd feel guilty. You know, that was just. Now I
Yes.
know everyone can be different, and I respect everyone's approach in that way. But you know, when you think back, if you think back to your time when you were training there, and at that level and in the different settings, the likes of the States were still very advanced as regards training methods. That okay, the GAA who give a pass to, because you know we would have been sort of in our own bubble and we focused on, it was an all out or nothing thing. But as regards to basketball game, like that's one thing that fascinated me about the Bulls documentary was Phil Jackson's methods and what he had incorporated for that time. You know, even I talked to Bull Masson about this as regards yoga, Pilates. You know, he had all this. You know, these were huge contributors.
Absolutely. I think I need to point this out first of all, that Phil would have been the start of that new generation era for that way of thinking. You know, if you go back one coach previous to that, it was slightly different. And we're only talking a split on, and this is, I suppose you're talking around 1998, 1999, where sports science became a de facto thing. That's when it happened, Sean. Before that,
he was in a league of his own, really, wasn't he?
He was in a league of his own, and he was pioneering this new way of thinking.
Yeah.
You know, where the mind is interlinked to the body, and he was introducing various types of meditation and yoga, which we now call recovery strategies in Gaelic football or in other sports in Ireland now, where, you know, we're looking at kind of, you know, getting, we'll say, our heart rate back down to normal after training and staying in that kind of state until you have to go training again, that your body is in full recovery mode. But that period happened very quickly, and it wasn't always there even in USA sports. If you go back to Bobby Knight, Doug Collins, those guys were dogs. They just train guys harder than anybody else as well.
True. And look, there's a lot of things you have to factor in. You know, you have to talk. You know, in relation to sports, you're talking about floor space as well, and you know, area covered. You know, it's just the technicalities are not the same, but it's
Absolutely.
just I was just interested because even as a young lad, you know, I would have heard through different lads being in college going, "Oh, the county are training tonight, and they did so many laps and all that." And I remember even as a young lad, your mindset would be, "Oh God, I actually can't wait for that." You know, there was a party in a strange way looking forward to it, but it was just part and parcel, you know. And then sorry, just as like you're in with the setup and your basketballs go, you know, flying high, and you know we bring the club into it then, Trevor, and you know this was a period where you know you were building on success, you were getting the right group together. When did you start believing that okay, Ballymahon are ready to push on to the next level here?
I suppose when we won an intermediate title, Sean, in 1998, because we had to beat a good Clongish team. At one stage during that, it was a team of up and coming Bardens and an Enda Barden who was already established, you know.
Yeah.
And you need a bit of success to create more success. But at that stage, we had all of those guys who had come through that schoolboys ranks, under 14 ranks, under 16 ranks, who had familiarized themselves with success together and who had created a lot of trust amongst each other as well, you know. And I guess it all kind of fed into that. But you did need that relative success at senior level to feel like you can go on and win a county title.
Of course.
And, you know, we can be facetious about it as well and just say, and then Frankie Dolan came along. And it got us over the line. But that Ballymahon team, we wouldn't be offering the type of credit that we should be offering them just to limit it to Frankie, to be honest, you know.
Well, it's very easy for people on the
and
outside to do that, but
there were so many great players on that Ballymahon team.
Yeah. How did you shut that noise out at the time? Because I suppose I actually still remember that county final, and obviously I was on he actually beat us, I think, in the semi-final, I think, that year, or was it quarter or semi? I'm not sure actually. I think Frankie got a free in the last minute, but I was a very young lad actually at that time. But like, how did you shut out that noise? Because I do remember even, I remember at the age I was that, it was talked about a lot, because it was probably the first time it kind of happened inside the county, the sort of big name profile,
Yeah, absolutely. And make no mistake about it, Frankie was a real big name and a tremendous footballer.
Yeah.
God, I love the guy to pieces. But how do we shut it out? I guess it's like anything, Sean.
Bond group.
But the bottom line is you're winning.
Yeah.
And if you're winning, it supersedes everything. Like, how easy is it to be oblivious when you can just point to the result of a football match and go, well,
yeah,
we won, It's up to you guys to come and catch up now,
Yeah.
Like, it didn't affect us. And I suppose I want to be strong about it. The following year, Sean, and it's funny when it comes to county titles, I think it would be fair to say that we won a county title we should have lost, and lost a county title we should have won.
Yeah.
The following year, we were a much more established team. We played Clongish in a final, and there was an incident in the last second of the game where we should have got a goal to seal it before the replay. And I'll send you a video on it that afterwards. You'll put your hands to you'll put your hands to your eyes when you see it. But that's sport and that's life. Sometimes something happens and it happens on one little stroke of luck, and the following year you get that little stroke of bad luck and it goes against you. And I think you have to be able to deal with those ups and downs and treat them equally, like the poem If goes, treat those both those imposters alike.
Yeah, there's a tough one too, I'm sure. Like, obviously, but
yeah,
it would have been
incredibly.
Like, is there any party that looks back and would you would have loved to seen that team achieve another title?
Yeah, like, I would have been good friends with Porrick Davis, and he was winning titles to beat the band with Drumlish, and when you're talking 3, 4, 5 titles or whatever it was, and it's very frustrating when you get there and you've won one, and there's that part of you going, I don't want this to be labelled as a title that we just won because of Frankie Dolan.
Yeah.
So that second year, I would have loved to win another one, because Frankie's influence in the second year was a little bit less than it was the previous year, and we could have pointed to that as going, well, there you go,
Yeah.
But it never happened. And when you look back at it now, sometimes you just have to appreciate what way the cards fell, and I wouldn't change anything except if we had got another county title, it would have kind of cemented that kind of concept that maybe we were a really good team, which I feel we were anyway,
Yeah. Oh, of course, but look at all you have to do is look at league campaigns and everything around that time. There was your consistency, and although Frankie was probably that extra % that made a massive difference. Like, there was lots of days, you got to think of the other days too, where Frankie maybe mightn't have been performing at his peak, and that's where other lads showed their worth too. Like, it's
absolutely,
it's a team game at the end of the day.
It's a team game. There's no question or doubt about that. And look, Sean, there's days when things go right, and there's days when things go wrong. But Frankie was the defining factor in that final we played, and that would have cemented a lot of people's opinions, because you remember the big moments, and all those other areas around maybe a semi-final where things may not have went as well as they could have. That gets forgotten about. People just see the final moments, the kind of crescendo that led to it all. And what Frankie Dolan did in 15 minutes in that county final against Clongish, and the day we won, was just amazing.
Yeah.
It was like 1-3, 1-4 on the drop of a hat, and nobody else could have done that.
When you're there and when you're involved too, you'll always remember the journey, and that's, you'll think back to little moments throughout the whole championship campaign, and it's been a reoccurring thing that's come up actually. It's just, every team can relate to that little bit of luck on the road to success. I think every team experiences it, and unfortunately, the other teams are come out the wrong side of it, which you would have been the following year.
Yeah, absolutely. And which one you deserved to come out on the right side of may not be the way it panned out, and certainly wasn't that for us, because the second year we were far more accomplished in that first game that went to a replay. And as I said, you wouldn't believe what we ended up doing at the end of the game. But we got one, and to be honest, I'm very grateful for that, because there was no better feeling than you're bringing a cup back into a town that never won one.
Yeah.
And you're just seeing people in the community just being so happy just to see that cup there, just to do it once,
Of course.
Talk to Mayo about that now, who've been waiting years to get another, and it's just a great feeling to see those people like Albert Fallon and people who've been involved with us from a young age in Ballymahon, to see that mature and just kind of the end product to all that hard work that went in, because the GAA is based on volunteerism, and for me, it's those people that won that county title for us. Nothing else. We had a great bunch of lads at the right point in time as well. That's important. But you need the locals, you need the community kind of all rolling in, and the smiles on people's faces when you bring a cup back into a town that hasn't won it in so long, the first time. That's a memory you'll never forget. I'm sure you felt the same when you won your first county title.
I always said it whenever if and whenever I win one, I'll be a happy man, and because it's a very, very difficult thing to achieve.
Absolutely. It's very difficult. And out of everything that happens, my favorite moment is when it's all over.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting back and you're scanning everything else that's going on, and you're just seeing the happiest people you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And just to look at that and to have that feeling that something you did it with a team made these people feel this way, that for me is an amazing feeling.
It's the beauty of it all.
Yeah.
It really is.
Loved it.
Absolutely, and you had the honour, if I'm right, of captain Longford then the following year, Trevor. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah.
How was that? Like, was that a challenge? Was it great experience?
I enjoyed the experience because we were in Division 1, and there were some great teams coming to town.
Brilliant, yeah.
And that was the year we got promoted to Division 1. We ended up beating Derry and Ballymahon. Sorry, I correct myself on that, Sean. But it was a great to captain your county, Sean. If my football in the family growing up was always a huge factor,
Yeah. And
I'd loved that my grandparents were sport mental. Growing up in my house it was sport or nothing, And I'd love to have been able to come home and tell my grandfather that I was captain of Longford GAA. That would have made him the happiest man in the world,
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't feel pressure with that or anything. You just get on with your game. And if you're in good shape, Sean, and you can lead, and this is where it might feel a little bit different to you. There's good games and bad games, But I never really beat myself up about the bad games, knowing that, look, I tried everything I could. I left it all out there. So if other people want to be upset with me, it doesn't worry me, because I felt comfortable that I had kind of put it all out there and there was nothing more I could do, And some days, you got your arse handed to you, but, you'd like to think that the majority of the time, you cut the mustard yourself.
It was good practice. It was good practice mentally, that even to be able to ask yourself that and answer that question, because it's something you learn as you go on. That I gave it my all on that day, and just time to move on. But I suppose it's not everyone could operate that way, but it's the right way to go about it. And I think the sooner players realise that, the better. That you don't have to. you don't have to show prolificity, like as regards scoring or certain aspects of the game. You know, sometimes just emptying the tank is enough. You know, and just giving it whatever you can on that day.
Yeah, you're right about that. And yet at the same time, look, we all fall victim to thinking you must score. And I remember doing it myself, even though, 1 second, Sean, do you mind if I just cut this for a minute?
No problem at all.
Okay. Thanks, Sean.
You're okay, Trevor. I'll be back now.
So we were talking about...
We're just talking about, just giving your all on any given day is, it's enough. It's just realizing that. And, as you were saying, we can fall back into the bracket of, how much did you score today? Because sometimes that's all people talk about. I don't think people talk about it anymore in relation to that as much. I think people have kind of moved on with the times that
they have.
Yeah, it's not the black and white question of, did he score?
And maybe not. It's moved on, and I'd still feel it hasn't moved on to the extent it possibly could. But it certainly has moved on. And there's days like I think I mentioned this to Stephen Lynch, where I might feel, even though I thought I played well myself on the pitch, I might feel, geez, I better sneak a score or two just to make the manager happy. Yeah. So I remember there was games where I felt I played well, but now I must get a score or two just to keep maybe a manager that was watching the game happy, that would be looking at the game maybe in a different way than maybe I might have been looking at it. And I'm not saying either is right or wrong, but I always felt that I might. So maybe I might hang in beside Niall Sheridan for a minute, and I'd know that he'd win a ball and just let people get attracted to him, and I might get a score there handily off the back of that. But I felt like I was cheating myself. I felt like I was doing this just to please a manager,
I can understand that, sure. Like when you see 1 or 2 points beside a wing forward's name, it always looks good.
It always looks good, and you'll never get credit otherwise. Like sometimes if I turn on RTE, you see your 3 pundits, they're always forwards, or they're always attacking players. Very seldom, do we put on a pedestal, we'll say, the cornerback that can shut a player down. And give him the voice to be able to turn that, and allow us to appreciate it as another art in Gaelic football.
Yeah,
that's out there aside from the art of scoring as such,
Yeah, because I'm sure as defenders go to games too, like as forwards do, they're looking at the art of defending. They're looking at how a lad position himself, and oftentimes, as you said, if a defender gets on top, the first thing that's said is, "Oh, the forward had an off day."
Absolutely. Like I remember Luke Dempsey, Sean. We'd have a training session, and unless there was 10-42 scored by the forwards, the training session was terrible. So if the backs had the upper hand, it was a terrible training session. But if the forwards absolutely annihilated the backs, and the backs went in with their heads between the tails, it was the best training session ever, And I just thought, this is weird. This is because coming from a basketball, you talk about a flow between defense and offense, and they all kind of twine into one another,
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at this going, are we going to actually give the backs credit for holding the forwards to 8 points? No. Unless it was 10-54 scored, it was a terrible training session.
I know, like I can totally relate from as you know, from a forwards perspective. I remember coming up to 2012 actually when we were training with the club as well. We'd have backs and forwards, and the backs would just be eating us alive.
Yeah,
the odd nights, they just would be ramping up, and the odd session, my Uncle Tommy and my father would just call it, and the backs would have it, and you'd be raging coming off, because it's always a happy ending for the forward. Like, but it's great in hindsight to say, well, you know what, credit where credit is due. Those lads are making us better, because if we go out the next day, we're not going to be met with the ferocity we're after enduring there now.
Absolutely. And do you really want to leave your poor backs last session to be the one where they got annihilated before they go out and maybe face a Dublin and Croke Park or something?
Exactly.
But,
I know.
Your Uncle Tommy, Sean, is he the guy that coached Mohill, was it?
Yeah, he coached Mohill, yeah.
Very good, yeah. Those guys spoke very highly of Tommy, actually, when we were down there.
Yeah, he had great success in Mohill, and he was with William down there recently.
Oh, very good. Very good.
So, Yeah, and going back earlier, Trevor, just when you mentioned about the injury, the reason I was asking you what leg it was, because you're kind of known for you have a very unorthodox kicking style.
Yeah.
And I suppose the thing that popped into my head is I just wondered, was that hamstring something that was did it change the way you struck the ball? Did it change your technique in any way as you got on? That's the only reason I asked that time. I was just curious, because that's one thing. Even as a young lad watching that, like, I loved your Longford team. Like, your Longford team was a huge inspiration to me growing up as a young lad, and I always remember you're a very unorthodox kicking style, but very, very accurate.
Sean, I think I can answer this one pretty quickly and pretty simply for you. Every opportunity I had at a young age to develop skills went into basketball, and kicking was an afterthought. If I went to Gaelic football training, it was whatever skill training I could get at county training, or I never had the time to go down to the local football pitch and practice on my own and develop, we'll say, the technique of maybe someone like yourself or somebody else. All of that time was invested into playing basketball. And I guess that's probably why it looked a bit awkward.
Yeah, well, there was nothing wrong with the accuracy.
That's the thing. Look, it served me okay.
Doesn't matter what way you strike it.
There's no question about that. It served me okay. Yeah, that's true. Now, in saying that, if you were to talk to maybe Podgy Davis or something like that, he'd give you an answer about that one fairly quickly.
the delivery, is it?
But yeah. Now, in fairness, I tried to deliver it as much as possible into Podgy, but we used to have great crack. Porrick would say to me, "Jesus, Trevor, you can't kick a point at training. How come you can kick them during games?" And he put so much pressure on you at a training session that you'd be getting so frustrated with yourself, your play would be getting worse instead of better,
Well,
and the same with
match time when it mattered.
Same with Desi. Yeah, for some reason in match time, because I don't believe you can think and play football, Sean.
No.
I think you got to just play. And during the match, when it comes to striking a ball or anything like that, it just happens naturally. And, you're not thinking about, or the lad's going to be slagging you afterwards, anything. It's got to become a natural motion. And as soon as you begin to think, that's when you slow down by a half a step, or that's when you get a little bit more nervous than you should be,
That's where you're blocked and you're turning one time too many. And
yeah, just make things work off the autonomous,
Yeah. Well, I always remember your super finish against Derry there in Pearse Park in 2006 for the goal.
Well, that's right, yeah.
It's textbook stuff.
I had a good joke with Stephen Lynch, actually, in the chat I had with him, that was the day our physio kind of blinded me in the eye with a DP before I went out.
Yeah.
So that's the day I got that goal. So he's adamant I wouldn't have got it if I was able to see.
You should have told Stephen you used to train blindfolded.
Yeah.
Your instincts kicked in.
Yeah, instincts kicked in, yeah.
And I suppose this isn't a question as I ask too often, though, Trevor, but looking back in your career, like, you've had a great career with Longford, and I'm sure you're very proud of everything you achieved. And I suppose I always like to know the moment. How did the moment come about when you knew, right, the time is up here?
It was very simple.
Was it a personal decision, or did things just happen that made your decision for you?
Things happened, and your own man Declan Rowley and Luke Dempsey were in charge of the team, and I always respected Declan's ability to be able to judge a player,
Okay.
And I was always pragmatic about how things operate in football as well, and there's a time to kind of call it a day. And we were playing Westmeath in Cusick Park in Mullingar, and we got off to a bad start and things weren't going well, and I was taken off very early in that game, and I was very frustrated. And I remember going into the dressing room and just being angry, Sean, because I think you might have mentioned this in one of your podcasts. To be taken off early in a game is not a nice feeling, And I remember going home and just reflecting on everything. And I guess it's like a car and miles on the clock, and something will begin to slow you down somewhere along the way. And I just wasn't as fast as I used to be, and certainly wasn't as fit as I used to be. And those two aspects of my game were always they were key. In Gaelic football, I was never going to get by on the sheer skills of the game. Being able to throw a dummy solo and kind of make space for myself at a slow pace. Everything had to happen through an athletic ability. And Declan, being the wise man that he was, now let me be honest about it. There was about 20 minutes after that game, I would have strangled him. But being the wise, and when you get home and you think to yourself and you reflect on things, and no better men to be able to make that decision for you as well. But that was the end. That was the end of my county career that day. I might have made a fleeting comeback, but nothing more after that. And it was something I could accept.
Game, Trevor, was it?
It was a championship game. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So was the season over that game? After that game, or?
The season was over after that game at that particular point in time, from what I can remember. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well.
And
fair play. Thanks for being honest about it. Like, it's just it's everyone has a different experience, and I think it's an important address too, because you can get very, as you said there, it can be a very emotional one too, but it can come about in different ways for different people.
Yeah, but the way I see it is, I don't regret a moment of anything. Sean.
Yeah, great.
I really don't, and I'm so kind of proud to have been involved with Longford. I'm proud to have my family in there watching you while you were playing, and come back home to Ballymahon and to be able to see guys who had gone into the game and said, look, you played well or you didn't play well, but to respect their honesty and to enjoy their company afterwards, and to ultimately have made some of the best friends you could ever come across.
Yeah.
I wouldn't swap it for the world.
There's no better feeling than putting on that county jersey on any given day, any big day. It's very special.
No, it's very special. There's no question or doubt about that.
Thanks, Trevor. Fair play to you. Just want to draw back to the basketball. If I'm guessing, your position would have been point guard, shooting guard?
It was point guard and shooting guard. Yeah, and that was. Go on, Sean.
Go on. I'm just curious about what tools you brought with you from one code to the other. If I'm right in from playing against you from a young age, and obviously watching that Ballymahon team, I could be completely off here now, but from my observation of what the Ballymahon style of play, I always saw you as a kind of a point guard along that half forward line, that you were the first link-up player, say possession ball, midfield, half-back line. You were the go-to man along that line, and then you played somewhat of a point guard role then when you were in possession, looking for the inside guys.
Absolutely. I think you've nailed that, Sean. With one caveat, but you've certainly nailed it from a Gaelic football point of view, in that I carried those sort of skills from basketball into it to link the play and to kind of play to what would have been Ballymahon's strengths at the time.
Yeah.
In that we didn't have tremendous forwards, we had good forwards, but we had a very fit team who was capable of linking the play through the hands, and were very good at decision making. And the skills that you carry over from basketball into that are so complementary, it's unbelievable,
Mm-hmm.
And in saying that, from a basketball point of view, I was a more accomplished shooting guard than I was a point guard, even though I could play both positions.
And why was that?
And literally, I could, unlike Gaelic football, I could really score when it came to basketball. If I got the ball in my hands, I used to think, how am I going to get a shot off here? Because if I do, I know I'll score. It sounds very strange, but even playing basketball at the time, the type of scores I was putting up were large, and no matter what way I look at it. And I just had that ability to kind of, get a bucket out of nowhere, or whatever way you want to look at it. And it was all kind of self-taught as well, because you learn these things at a young age, and they served me well right throughout my basketball career. I had a lot of, you talked about unorthodox kicking. I had a lot of unorthodox basketball moves that allowed me to kind of pick off a score that wouldn't have been taught to me if I had come through a regular sort of coaching setup, and a lot of it wasn't self-taught, which is different than maybe a lot of people might have thought. But the two sports are very complementary to one another, Sean. You can have aspects of basketball in Gaelic football, and likewise the other way around in basketball. I remember playing basketball with Dungannon one year, and I caught a ball on the basketball court, like the way you'd catch a ball in midfield in Gaelic football. I left off my left leg, jumped up into the air and kind of caught it like that mid-court. And when I came down, I could hear the crowd going, "Oh, geez, that's the GAA and that guy," which is, you would have been hearing the opposite when you were playing Gaelic football. You would have been, "Oh, that's the basketball coming out," but that's the GAA. And I remember that time, Art McCrory, who managed Tyrone at the time, picked me off at the door of Dungannon Basketball Club and asked me would I play football with Tyrone. And I remember looking at Art and going, "There's no way I'm leaving Longford." And we had a great old chat,
Yeah,
and
Jesus.
of course, Art brought that Tyrone team then to many county finals. But Art was a big basketball fan, or many All Irelands, But Art was a big basketball fan and was always down at Dungannon Leisure Centre for our games.
Brilliant. That's, it's incredible. Yeah, it always struck me about it. And I suppose you learn from your basketball days too the importance of possession, and holding on to possession, and that was a massive part of your game in Gaelic as well.
Yeah, because to keep it simple, if you have the ball, you can score, and if you have the ball, the opposition can't score. So possession for me it's a very simple thing. You can wear down the opponent's fitness by keeping the ball through your hands, and it's a lot harder to chase the ball than it is play with the ball.
Of course, yeah.
Playing with the ball is fun,
Yeah, for sure. And even going from one extreme then, where minimal contact to full contact, and getting that balance right as well.
That's it. And I've said it once. Like you see all the basketball players that have come through to play Gaelic football. A lot of them carry a lot of the same attributes into the Gaelic football field. Good hands, the ability to see a pass. I think you get a lot of that from basketball. The ability to scan maybe a free man. And the other thing that you may get from basketball as well is your ability to create space for others that nobody notices on a Gaelic football field, The guy who kind of steps out of the way or makes a cut to bring maybe a few defenders with them to create space for somebody else. That's one thing that the appreciation levels just haven't gone to where they could be in Gaelic football,
No.
The guy who kind of, runs through and knows that he's not going to get the ball but brings two men with him. And all of a sudden there's a free pass into maybe a Sean McCormick or a Porrick Davis that you end up getting a point. But we still haven't nailed in on that level of kind of an analysis to say, look, this guy deserves a lot of credit for being able to run through those motions, As we said with the Phil Jackson thing there, I don't know if you noticed, you always used to run a triangle offense.
That's right, yeah.
And in that triangle offense, you might have 189 options. And you would actually learn them as homework,
Yeah, that fascinated me. I just, that level of detail and having to acquire all that information.
Yeah, and literally it's a sheet of paper and you go home, and if you were at an international competition, you would be sitting down studying your plays at night. And we had coaches that if you didn't know your plays the next day and know all the options that were coming off them, they'd let you know about it, Yeah. You'd be running suicides until the cows came home with some of them,
They were horrible suicides, were they?
They were horrible, yeah. They were a lung buster.
What a full length of the court, is it?
Well, what it is it's end line to free throw line, back to end line. It's a shuttle, back to the halfway line, back to the end line, back to the far free throw line, back again, back to the end line, back again. So you might repeat that 5 times, but if you made a real bad mistake, the coach might put you on the line to run 20 of the bloody things, and it's tough going. Yeah. You'd know all about it by the time you're finished,
I suppose, like you said there, an appreciation of creating space. I totally agree with you. And again, it has to come from the player themselves. I feel that ability to be able to just, in the moment, stop, get the ball for the moment, look at where you are, and getting out of
Exactly.
there. And I'm sure it's the same. Is it the same for basketball in the sense of being aware of where the triangle is at each time?
Yeah, it's about being aware of where it is and what movements you can have to create the space to get your best shot off at a particular point in time during the game. Because if you're running offense in basketball for 30 seconds, during that 30 seconds, you want to find that point in time where you will get the highest percentage shot off, your greatest chance of scoring.
Okay.
So you will run through those movement processes, and when it arrives, you need to take that shot at that point in time, because you don't know if you will get that percentage chance again during it. Now in the NBA, the college basketball is very different to the NBA basketball. Whereas NBA now, you can leave a lot up to the individual. The athletes are so bloody good.
Yeah.
But if you watch college basketball, it's an amazing technical sport where everything is kind of understood down to its minute detail, including the defensive aspect of it, which I think the greater learning for Gaelic football from basketball comes from a defensive point of view than it does come from an offensive point of view in Gaelic football. Because you can really put responsibility on the players to fulfill roles that will cut down on and negate the opposition to the bare minimum if everybody fulfills their role. And if you don't fulfill your role, you can be identified. Whereas sometimes in Gaelic football, we can hide behind other people's roles if we really want to,
Absolutely.
No more so than me saying I might have scored a point when I just did it to please the manager, But we can do that on the defensive end. But in basketball, you can't do that.
No.
If the ball is on one side of the court, there's a position you're supposed to be in. And if you're not there, and the video analysis afterwards shows you're not there, that question can be pointed to you and go, why weren't you there? And I think that can be applied to Gaelic football, and I haven't seen it yet. Maybe apart from Jim McGuinness's setup with Donegal that nobody really liked, but it got results.
Well, he was kind of the Phil Jackson of our sport, wasn't he? In a way, at that time, just in relation to he changed the landscape.
He was, Sean. He certainly was.
And that took years. Sure, he tell you himself. He was probably studying and preparing 10 years before that.
Yeah.
You don't just acquire these skills overnight.
Yeah, and I'm not sure anybody else could have done it.
No. Right down to the walkthroughs.
Right down to the walkthroughs, yeah. Repetition, and knowledge of where you need to be and what you should be doing. Now, other teams went on in future years to try and repeat those processes, but nobody executed it as well as they did at that particular point in time.
No.
And then, of course, the chess game, other teams began to be able to make moves to counteract it.
Yeah.
And the game evolved a little bit more. But I think if Jim got another team, he'd find a way with another team and maybe a different strategy, because he found one with Donegal that worked, and I would like to think that he wouldn't be solely limited to that type of strategy to get results,
True. It's just I suppose when you get into that position and you're under pressure to get success and you need time, and unfortunately that's just not available with most GAA teams. You have a very short window and you have to get a plan in place quickly and get a successful plan in place.
Absolutely. And you have to nail down your big pillars. And sometimes I feel we offer a lot of gesturism towards everything from, we'll say, the sport and science point of view, that we're never kind of completing the blocks. Do you know what I mean? We're getting so far, and then we're saying, okay, that box is ticked, where it may not be ticked. It just maybe brought 80% of the way,
See, it doesn't allow you, the GAA calendar doesn't allow you to properly carry out cycles. Like you have lads coming in the middle of one cycle, you have lads starting at the beginning, you have fellas coming in the third cycle, and that's
correct.
Think about strength and conditioning alone.
Correct.
And I suppose it's this lockdown probably has given GAA players all over the country adequate time to get their cycles in sequence, like get them in the correct order and actually utilize them.
Absolutely. If you ever had an opportunity to train as a professional, COVID-19 has given you that time, you know?
Yeah, of course. And it's something I'd love to see. I'd love to see the GAA calendar getting more rounded, but it's very, very complicated.
It is. And look, it will change into the future. I worry about the GAA sometimes,
So do I,
Sean.
yeah.
That it can live successfully into the future when you look at our government guidelines as to how planning is being organised, and you know we're all going to be moving towards, if you are to believe what's happening into the future, towards city lives, and with country populations getting smaller and cities getting bigger, and how the GAA is going to adapt to that is a major worry for us into the future under the current model we have, you know. And the void is getting bigger as well.
Sure, look, professionalism is inevitable. You know, I know everyone likes to downplay it, but I just think it's down the line. It's just inevitable. Like, that's the way it has to become.
I totally agree. The question is, do we speed up that process to get there in time, or do we end up fighting against other professional sports later down the line where we had an opportunity to prepare at an earlier stage? Like, to be honest, Sean, I see the intercounty setup eventually, and perhaps the Super 8s are an initial precursor into this, but I see the county teams being actually feeder teams into an All-Ireland's professional league of maybe about 8 teams.
Yeah, it's just crossed my mind there, actually, yeah. Just a complete rezoning.
When you look, Sean, you have to think into the future, and if you look at government planning for Ireland going forward and where the populations are going to be, eventually our own current model isn't going to be sustainable, whether we like it or not. And the GAA is too good to Ireland to lose.
Yeah.
Ireland has too much history with the GAA to lose. And we need to move and stay abreast of where kind of the country is going in order to continue and to thrive. And eventually, as you say, all sport throughout history, whether we like it or not, has eventually moved towards professionalism, you know?
Yeah.
And the GAA will have to move.
Of course, and we have to keep it appealing because like kids nowadays they're immersed in professional sports. Like most kids in primary schools, it's soccer, rugby. You know, they're wearing the rugby jerseys, they're wearing the soccer jerseys. Like, we have to be careful with GAA that we want GAA to be appealing as well. And you know, and Sean, it has lost its appeal.
It has, and don't get me wrong, it's going to be a very sad day when that model changes.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
But it's going to be an inevitable day as well. And hopefully, you know, the days of the communities and the cup coming home and it being as a big occasion, it may have to be going to maybe a Midlands stadium to watch a Midlands team play against someone else, with the county teams being feeders into it.
Yeah.
And maybe the top echelons have their finger on the pulse and they look at the Super 8s, which will be full stadiums and which was brought in. And you know, there's no doubt that when it comes to organising All-Ireland semi-finals and finals, the GAA go towards where the packed stadiums are and where the money is. So change is inevitable. The question is how quickly you want to move there, and how quickly you can move there, because, you know, we have this history of how the GAA has been organised through amateurism it can only be admired, you know. And there will be a huge reluctancy to change at the same time.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic now, and I totally agree. There's a big change needed. Yeah,
it's not really fair either on players. Like, I'm just looking at what we've now. I understand this year is exceptional circumstances, but it looks like we're going to throw together an inter-county setup in the middle of winter. And end up running into a club season in January, into an inter-county season after that. I don't envy any player that's going to work during the day and coming back and being able to organise that, while at the same time the Dublin player will put his bag on his back and get into training and get out of training within a matter of hours and be able to do things at their absolute leisure. Look,
not a level playing field, no.
It's not a level playing field, and we won't solve it over a podcast either.
No, but it's food for thought.
it's a concern. It genuinely is, because for me, Ireland needs the GAA and needs the GAA to be strong. And the GAA has made Ireland a great country as well. So I'm hoping that we can continue to adapt and evolve with how things go. And, that in 40 years' time, the GAA is every bit as strong. And at the moment, I have a slight worry.
Yeah, well, like many others.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trev. And before we move on from the basketball, I'd just like to ask you 2 quick questions. Your favourite NBA player currently?
My current Luka Doncic.
Oh, lovely, yeah. And
no question or doubt about it. I'll just elaborate on that quickly. I managed to get to see Luka when he was 16. He came down to play in UCAM Mercia, and we had a game that night, and Luka just lit it up.
Really?
And the following day, he had a game in Granada, and I was like, "That guy's 16." And I just jumped in the car and went to watch him a second night in a row. And I started texting everybody, going, "I think I've just seen the greatest basketball player I've ever seen." And everybody's going, "Who is he? Who is he?" And we just let him go. And it was great to see him do so well in his first year in the NBA. Like, it's amazing.
What a player, yeah.
Amazing.
And if the season returns, who do you think will win the playoffs this year?
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb. And I'm going to go with the LA Clippers.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, it's what?
Yeah.
Just say that again, Sean. Because I've said this to loads of people.
I agree.
Nobody
Yeah,
agreed.
I agree.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I just think the Clippers would be a different animal come playoffs.
Yeah. The Clippers have an assistant coach, actually, that's related to, has an Irish second name, and is often in Sligo. He has relations in Sligo. Yeah, Shane O'Mara's. He's a cousin of Shane O'Mara's in Sligo, believe it or not. Brendan.
Cool, yeah. I'd be a big Kawhi fan as well, like so.
He's tough. He is a tough baller.
But I think he was just a perfect fit for the Clippers. So he just seems to have a personality that brings lads together too, like, you know.
Yeah, and Doc Rivers really knows how to use him, Sean. Like I've seen the Clippers a few times, and when they're on their game, they're a very formidable opponent. And I'm just wondering, over 7 games, what team can beat them. Look, I could have went with an easy option, going with the Lakers or something like that as well.
But I just don't see it with the. Like, I know the Lakers, obviously, that they have the big two, but I just don't, like you said there, the strength and depth. I don't think you're going to get enough from the rest of those guys.
Yeah. We should know this, that as you get older, things don't get easier, and they're relying on LeBron and Anthony Davis, to pull the strings. And LeBron, both of them are doing tremendously well, but we're talking about a 7-game series, maybe once or twice going down the straight. I'm not sure that when you get to that age, you can cope with that as well as what maybe you would have been able to do a few years earlier.
Yeah. Cool. Trevor, just from a coaching perspective, you got into coaching. I want to ask you, from your involvement in coaching, what aspect of the inter-county setup and game would you like to have seen in your playing days? That would you like to have lived through?
I'd like to have lived through the strength and conditioning sports science side of things.
I would have guessed that,
from the early days, just because I'd like to be able to compare the two. Because the science is always changing, and it's very easy to run with the latest fads that have come in,
Yeah.
And then it will change back in some manner or means. But I'd like to have been able to compare the two and see a Trevor, what athlete he would have been under both those different formats of being brought through it, and if there was twins, and one could be trained in the old style and one could be trained in the new style, and see what way you go through your career and measure yourself at the end, and see what difference kind of the new age training would have added to your game,
I'm sure you're not alone in that. Wondering that, I'm sure.
And we're wondering about it. I'm not convinced either way. I remember talking to Mick O'Dwyer, actually. It was down at Glenn Ryan's father's funeral, actually. I met Miko outside, and Miko said to me in one breath, he goes, "I don't believe in the science, And then he said, but when I bring trainers down, this is all I do. He said, I train them hard in the pre-season. We do some laps, then we go into some sprinting, then we go into some. And I'm thinking, actually, that is the science, but we just put names on it in the modern language that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, I'm not saying it was perfect what he was doing, but he was periodizing his training. He was doing it in the right format. He was heavy loading early on, offloading at the right times, but he just wasn't calling it what we're calling it in the modern world,
Yeah.
And obviously there's other aspects missing where the technology is coming in,
of course,
the equipment and everything like that. But in a lot of ways, he was applying the science without calling it what we call it in today's world,
Yeah. It's where the tactics changed at all. Like, you could have the fitness and the stamina, but then one smart move could make another lad look really foolish with all the ground he's covering, which is pointless. It's
absolutely.
That's the way it evolved, and it made everybody stand back and go, "Oh, Jesus, hold on here a second."
Absolutely. Like, you only have to, we're talking from a tactics point of view, you only have to turn on TG Cat or Gold, and you're looking at some of the games, and some of it is unrecognizable, Sean.
It is, yeah.
To the modern game, and that's the chess game. There's more moves to it, and people are adapting all the time. And believe me, it's not finished, Sean. There's way more to come from the tactical side of things to football. It's an evolving process all the time.
Yeah, those plays you were going home to learn off might be in the near future.
I think they'll certainly come from a defensive point of view, because you can definitely structure your defense in Gaelic football better than, we'll say, the way we're going out and currently to do it,
Maybe not 180. How many was there on that?
I'd say on the triangle offense, maybe 189 options, something like that.
Crazy.
Yeah. And there could be more, There could be more. Maybe 189 that I know of,
Yeah.
But, but where you can hold players responsible for where they should be at certain points of time, because I suppose playing defense is about negating space and closing it down and being compact, whereas when you move into the offensive role, it's more about kind of being inventive, and kind of doing something a little bit unusual, so you get to have all of that inventiveness on the offensive side of things, whereas on the defensive side of things, really what you're looking at is closing up shop and making sure. So a lot of these kind of set moves and plays, we should get away from thinking about it from an offensive point of view, because I think the best offense is the freedom, is the flamboyancy, is the movement, and stuff that can't be second thought,
that has to be natural.
Has to be natural. And whereas from a defensive point of view, you can be very rigid and structured, and that's just my opinion. And I think basketball can have a huge influence there if it's allowed to happen. And I think it will.
Of course, it's seeping in already.
Yeah. Have you ever seen any of these MIT guys with what they've done with kind of the stats from basketball or anything like that? Where
no,
they'll almost tell you what shot is the best shot to take at any given time in the game.
Yes, regards detail. Just from watching the NBA, you'd just be looking up. You'd be looking up different.
It's bananas, really.
It's unreal to think lads have certain hotspots, and they just know not to shoot from certain areas. It's crazy. The detail is just phenomenal.
Absolutely, and certain hotspots that if this is the time left on the clock, he should be shooting from there. But if there's a different time on the clock, he should be shooting. He should not be shooting. He should be passing.
Yeah, and, exactly.
These are all amazing details, and I'd hate to think that the game would become that robotic as well.
I know. Likewise,
that we don't allow the judgment calls and all. We see what happens. Did you see the VAR incident the other night on?
Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
All human common sense would say just allow the goal.
No.
As the computer says no.
Exactly. Trevor, your greatest sporting achievement?
Winning the county final with those guys on the right hand side. That was special. Ballymahon had never won it, Sean, and to come home to all the people who kind of put in all the time and effort that had been local, you'd grown up with, you went to school with, that can't be replicated. And I wouldn't swap that for the world either.
Very special.
Very, very special,
How would Trevor Smullen like to be remembered?
Someone who cared, Sean. Just someone who cared. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. I don't really want to elaborate on that.
No.
Just anything I do, I'd like to think that I thought about it and cared about things, family, friends, football, the stuff that's important. Just that I cared.
Great, Trevor. Okay, we're on the spots. Lions or Barry's tea?
Ooh, Barry's.
Barry's.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, Barry's all day.
Yeah, Barry's all day is right. Yeah, totally agree.
Your second one. Pick your basketball starting five from the Byrne Cup winning team.
Oh, right. I need a big centre, right?
You can include yourself, so I'd imagine you're going point guard.
Well, I'd like to be shooting guard on that team.
Okay,
actually,
okay.
yeah. I'm gonna go shooting guard on that team because I'm gonna put Podgy in a point guard.
Okay.
Small little guy. He reminds me of a good point guard from St. Vincent's. Mark Keenan, low to the ground, could see a lot of stuff that was happening. Was tremendously accurate. I need a big sort of Shaquille O'Neal type character, and I have to go with BB Barden there.
Right, where are you going to put him?
Centre.
Okay.
Anybody bigger on that team, and I'll either go 4 or 5 with BB because I could draft in Big Aidan Keogh.
Oh yeah,
he'd make a good centre as well, kind of
Sean Bradley-esque with just a bit more aggression.
Well, I can imagine him shooting kind of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sky hooks and stuff like that because he has that kind of gangly frame as well. You know what I mean?
He's long, classic. Yeah,
he's lean. And I could see him coming up to the free throw line, kind of angle and just hitting a sky hook. And whether it went in or not, it didn't matter. That man wouldn't care less anyway.
No, absolutely not. No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
It was brilliant, And I have one more spot to fill, and that's the small forward spot. And,
so small forward.
I'm just going to throw Paul Barden in there because I think if he played basketball, he'd be damn bloody good at it. So
that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Fair play to you.
Let's just get him in there.
Enjoy that. That was class. Now, Trevor, thank you very much.
Sean, you're more than welcome.
You're a great one, and thank you for your contribution to Longford GAA over the years and sport in general, and being a part of that memorable team for us young lads that we wanted to aspire to. And I've nothing else to say on the matter. Just fair play. You should be incredibly proud. I'm fascinated by your career in both GAA and basketball. I think you're a wealth of knowledge, and it was a great chat. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
I thoroughly enjoyed it too, Sean. And can you do me one favor and keep this going because I'm loving it. It's something that I'm going to sleep on every night. Even if I'm only listening to half a podcast one night, half a podcast the next night. It's bringing back great memories. And do you know what? If there is young guys listening in, you're giving them so many lessons that it can't be got wholesale because where do you ever have the time? Now guys have their mobile phone. They can be traveling in the car. Just going to listen to Sean, see what has gone on, and maybe there's a little nugget that I can take out of it and learn from it and apply to my own game. And all of these things are brilliant, and they've certainly got me through COVID-19 anyway. Let's put it that way, Sean.
Well, thank you very much, Trevor. I really appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Really, really appreciate it.
As I said, it's always nice to hear that feedback. And look, that was the goal at the start. And it's nice to shine light on people like yourselves. And if someone in any field can take anything from them, we were all that person at one stage, and we would have snatched any bit of info we could have got, or any sort of advice or heads up in some way, shape or form, So.
Yeah, it's brilliant, Sean. And are you playing any football this year?
No, finito myself. Now, I'm actually looking into playing a bit of basketball if I can, just as a sort of as a leisure more than anything. But we'll see.
I've been roped into a basketball game tomorrow night. That would be my first game. I tend to play one a year now, but I'm going up to.
Is that how it gets to? Well, I tried one there before a few months back with a few lads from Slashers, and I wasn't the better of it afterwards. Now it's demanding on the body.
it is demanding on the body. And listen, if you do have a game, I have no problem coming in to play as well. But yeah, it's a great game that you can learn from as well. But Sean, listen, thanks for everything, man.
No, thank you, Trevor. And
I've enjoyed the chat.
For giving me the time. Fair play and stay safe.
You too.
All the best, Trevor. Take care.
Enjoy.
Good luck.
Bye bye.